Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Q&A with a QSA session. So the aim of today is just a bit of an informal, interactive opportunity for you to engage directly with a Qualified Security Assessor, also known as a QSA. Today I'm joined by our experts, Alistair Stewart and Tibor Lazko, who will clarify and answer any questions you might have around your PCI DSS compliance or the topic in general. My name's Lauren Gotting and I'll be facilitating today's session. If we don't manage to answer your question live, don't worry, we'll get back to you offline, so drop any questions in you have. And I'd like to reassure you, no question will be left unanswered. We will tackle every question we have. So just a brief bit of background on URM Consulting. We've been around for 20 years. It's our 20-year anniversary this year. And at URM, we have a holistic approach to security. We have our governance, risk and compliance team. We have our cyber team, and we bring together the technical expertise alongside policy processes. What sets us apart from the rest, we like to think, is the passion everyone has here. So our team of consultants, they really want to work with our clients to make them secure and generally improve their businesses. Not only are our team of consultants working with clients, but they've all worked on the other side of the fence and been in operational roles. So really understand how to apply topics, controls, frameworks in a way that doesn't hinder business unnecessarily. So yeah, really proud of that as an organisation. The areas of expertise, so we support with Cyber Essentials, Cyber Essentials Plus, GDPR, ISO standards, but I suppose of greatest relevance is PCI DSS. So we have a team of QSAs and PCI experts that support our clients with achieving compliance, maintaining compliance, and everything in between, really. And as a business, URM are also accredited. So, we're part of the council, the PCI Council. We've got our CREST badges for pen testing. We're also ISO certified as well. So practice what we preach. So a bit about Alistair and Tibor. Alistair's been involved in information security for 20 years and has been a QSA for 20 years as well. So a lot of experience under his belt. Probably conducted over 100 PCI DSS assessments and stays up to date with any changes to the requirements and that the council put out too. And Tibor similarly has been involved for a very long time, probably close to 25 years, and is also a qualified security assessor, along with some other information security qualifications that he's achieved over the time as well. Let's dive into our questions. So the first question we have to address today is, what are some of your top tips for making PCI compliance easier?
Stop taking payment cards.
Assuming that's not an option for most of our clients, I think my advice is always start with the card flow and segmentation. Get your scope as small as you can within practical sensibility. Start with your card flow and work out whether you need any of this stuff in scope. Do you need to store card data? Do you need to process it? What can you do to get rid of it?
Yeah, just understand where the data, where is it coming from? What do you need to do with it? How do you need to send it? And just reduce your scope, which is again not a PCI requirement, but it's the best advice you can get from many QSA or anybody.
Yeah, I find the clients that are the most difficult are the ones that take payments in lots of different ways. They've got 7 different websites. They've got different setups for different shops. They've got different call center environments, and this process for taking payments and that process. And you get incredibly complex environments. They're difficult to narrow down. They're difficult to apply the requirements to. And so the more you can simplify your processes, the easier compliance is going to be for you. And also, the other big one is the more static your environment is, the simpler it is. If you change your environment every few months, there's a lot to do. So if you can keep it static and simple, your compliance will be an awful lot easier. Certainly,
Very
that's a
true.
lot of my clients.
You can simplify your PCI responsibilities if you outsource as much as you can. So as long as you don't touch cards, you don't see them, you find your PCI compliant service providers, that makes your compliance significantly easier. But yeah, outsourcing is a whole other can of worm, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you go about reducing your scope?
Doing the maths on it some time ago, I think if you don't store card data and you don't process card data in your systems, you outsource all of that, about 35% of the requirements just disappear.
Yeah.
And become not applicable straight away before you've even considered anything else. So immediately you're reducing your compliance burden and your scope by doing that. You're letting the experts handle the card data.
Yeah. And the way you outsource it, let's say we're talking about a merchant, right? So the way you outsource it, it's either you're eligible for a SAQ, which is one of the easiest SAQ to complete. There's not much you need to do. There's not a lot of burden on the merchant itself. And I'm sure you agree with me, Alistair, this is where the industry goes. I mean, more and more often we just, and there's a whole other industry was built on how to take other people's PCI responsibilities.
Yeah, you get virtual call centers. You get people will do virtual call center environments for you. They'll provide staff for you. You can get people doing the DTMF stuff. Literally everything you take a payment for, there's a company providing that as a service to you, and you can use that. If you don't want to do that, or you can't go down that route, the fallback option realistically is encryption and segmentation. The more you encrypt your data, the less you decrypt it, the less your scope will be, and the more you segment, the better your scope reduction will be. So proper segmentation. And with cloud services and serverless architectures and software as a service these days, that's even easier to do. To just dump it into a cloud, segment your PCI environment from the rest easily virtually, and reduce your scope. So yeah, if you can't get rid of it, just reduce it by pushing it to one side and putting it in its own area somewhere.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So another question we have received is, do you need to be PCI DSS compliant to do anything with card payments? I've seen conflicting information from different payment providers about whether you are in or out of scope if you use their various payment products.
From my point of view, and I'm sure from yours, Tibor, this is, absolutely, you do need to be PCI DSS compliant when you do anything with card payments. There's no escaping from compliance. It's a contractual agreement. If you're accepting card payments, whether you're doing it yourself or outsourcing, you've got to be compliant.
Yeah. Again, I'm sure like the age-old joke is like the only way you don't need to be compliant if you stop taking card payments. It's usually not a viable business decision at that point.
Yeah, cash or check only at that point, which becomes unviable. So yeah, if there will be payment products and providers who'll say, use our service, and your PCI DSS is compliant. They do advertise like that, and unfortunately, that's not strictly true. There isn't a service that can make you PCI DSS compliant. There are services that can help you get there, but nothing that can make you compliant. So, yep, you've got to do it. Unfortunately, it just depends on the level of what you have to do.
Well, if you think about it, the good news is the council is kind of like okay with this. It's like, okay, so if you do like an iframe type installation, there's only a handful of requirements that are applicable to you. So the question, yes, you do need to be compliant, but the level of effort required for your compliance just completely varies between two clients sometimes.
Yeah, they do actively encourage you to outsource as much as possible to compliant providers and just lift the burden. They actively encourage it. So yeah, it doesn't sound as bad as it is. It really does.
Yeah, I think, PCI still is a big bad wolf in a lot of people's mind. And I think just a little bit of understanding will go a long way. That it may not be as frightening as you think it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Question number 2. So scanning technical tests, ASV scans and iframes, if our web pages use a PCI DSS certified third-party iframe for all processing, meaning no cardholder data is ever stored, processed, or transmitted by our systems, do we still need to conduct the quarterly ASV scans to maintain and achieve PCI DSS compliance as a level 2?
Short answer, yes.
Yes. Yes. It's going to be a reoccurring theme, I think, in our conversation. Yes, the requirement exists. Yes, you need to do it. whether it is actually you who's doing it, or if it's outsourced, whether your provider is doing this for you. You just need to have a little bit of an understanding. But yes, you're right. The short answer is yes. The requirement is there. You need to do it.
Yeah, because they changed this in version 4, because if you were iframe before an SAQA, the ASV scanning requirement didn't exist on the SAQA. They added it in. So previously, you didn't need to do it, although in my experience, a lot of banks were asking for it anyway, even though it wasn't a requirement. So, yep, you do need to do it. It makes a change from our normal answer as a QSA, which is it depends. But, yes.
Yes. But our only defense is whenever we ask questions, we only get it depends. So even if we're sort of like, oh, how am I interpreting this? And if we're like, you know what, why don't we ask the people who created the standard? And the reliable answer always is, it depends. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, that was a simple one. On to the next one.
Okay, this question, a very interesting one around vulnerability scanning and serverless environments. So how can an organization effectively meet PCI DSS internal vulnerability scanning requirements when the infrastructure is built on serverless and or cloud native technologies such as AWS, Lambda, AWS RDS? Probably more organizations going that way in the future as well. So is there any official guidance or documents from the council specifically for these type of environments?
So this is a poignant one. I have a couple of clients who do use serverless. They use the Azure Cloud Apps or Azure App Service, which is the same thing. And to my knowledge, there's no official guidance from the council on serverless. I haven't seen a guidance document. Have you seen one at all?
I think there was one council documentation about like I think it was more about modern scoping, like modern network. When they talked about like, okay, so serverless does exist, containers do exist, but it didn't really go into like, okay, so what are your requirements if you run a serverless environment? I guess it was really about scoping, and again, it all goes back to step number one. If it's in scope, the requirements are applicable to it. So the way I approach this with my clients is sort of like what is in their control, how much they can control the underlying environment. They can't, obviously. So certain requirements are fall in or out of scope, but vulnerability scanning, yeah, it's
there. I mean, the clients I've had using the Azure App Service, they have no visibility of the underlying virtual and physical machines. They can't see them or access them at all. They're simply putting code snippets into the app service and linking them together and running them. So there's nothing they could vulnerability scan in that environment. And we went back and looked at the Azure AOC compliance shared responsibility matrix, and they list the internal scanning as something that they do on the cloud environment. So that's where you should look for. Whichever serverless architecture you're using, go to the provider and see if they've ticked it as they're doing it first. If not, then that's the clue that you're probably going to have to do it. Then the question becomes how.
My recommendation to the client back then was exactly the same. It's like, okay, so this environment is provided to you, and possibly a vulnerability scanning is part of the service, and it is being done for you. But they were like, well, we don't know. And then they had to go back to the account holder and whatnot. But eventually, for that particular environment, they did the same thing as Azure does. But
it's weird how these companies define their different services and stuff, and it can be hard to root it out. But if you haven't got visibility of an underlying server, then it's got to be somebody else who's scanning it, unless they're going to let you scan it for them, which is unlikely.
So compliance levels and quarterly requirements. As a PCI DSS level 2 merchant, are quarterly activities like the vulnerability scans strictly mandatory? And if they're not performed consistently, what difficulties could an organization have when they eventually move to a level 1 merchant?
Yes, they're definitely mandatory. Let's start off straight from that. Definitely mandatory. The difference between level 1 and level 2 doesn't change which requirements are mandatory. It doesn't change anything to do with the standard. All it changes is whether you can self-assess or not. If you don't do them consistently, you'll be non-compliant. is difficulties for any level.
Yes. I don't know. Apparently, vulnerability scanning is such a hot topic. But yes, so if the requirement exists either in your ROC or any self-assessment, you do need to address it.
In place, not tested. I think that's it.
And not even compensating controls.
No, I don't think
not. Yeah. How would they evaluate it? Yes.
Yeah, they can't do compensating controls. You can't do customized validations on an SAQ either. So it's either in place, not applicable, or not tested. I think that's a lot.
So the question is yes, and yes. Quarterly, again, I would think vulnerability scanning is one of the least problematic thing because it's an automated process. It rolls on.
Traditionally, if you see any of those stats released, it's one of the most complied with requirements out of all the requirements with vulnerability scanning. It all usually says that most people are always doing it. And quarterly is a bit of a misleading term because in version 4 they've redefined that to mean no more than 90 days apart. So you need to be a little bit careful with quarterly. I usually recommend monthly to my clients anyway because it doesn't cost any more to do it. So.
Yes, and it's just good security practice, right? I mean, come on, it's not. I don't think it's cost more.
No, licenses are usually per IP, not per scan to do these things. So.
Remember back in the day, this was like a huge cost. Back 10, 15 years ago, like ASV scanning was like, something, I think like the major like Qualys and whatnot, they threw in so you have a handful of rescans for free, but now it's like, the technology moved on. A long time ago.
Yeah, it's not really an issue these days. Okay, next question.
Okay, so this question talking about merchants versus website hosting companies and the responsibilities and the scope. So for SAQA, are there any shared responsibilities in this case? So very specifically here, when using a Shopify platform, who in turn uses Stripe as a payment gateway, who does what?
How do we handle shared responsibilities with SAQA?
I wish there would be one. That would be so much easier. There would be a self-assessment questionnaire for every type of customer they have. But can you imagine AWS, even Shopify? My God, like all the different kind of installation that they work with, it's impossible to. Unfortunately, you just have to find the relevant requirements that are listed in a SAQ in a proper responsibility matrix from your third party. And then you need to and again, just going back to the vulnerability scan, for example, AWS lists ASV scanning as like a shared responsibility. So even if first glance the question that or the response you see in the responsibility matrix doesn't match up with what you expect, just talk and say like, okay, so this is my installation. It's easy.
You have to refer back to when the service provider says it's shared, you have to refer back to what their scope is. So they'll do it for their scope. You've got to do it for your scope. So it comes down to working out where you're responsible. So when using platforms like Shopify, you get their AOC, you get their shared responsibility metrics, you go through it and you see which ones they're doing and which ones are left for you to do. And if there's any discussion, just talk to them and say, look, you say this is shared, which bits am I left to do? And line up with your requirements. So.
And then again, if you think about, like Shopify is one of those one-stop shop. If you can go online, you can create your web page or web shop, you can accept payments in literally probably minutes, I would think. So they're purposefully built in a way that it requires the least amount of technical knowledge, I think, from the client.
Yeah, absolutely.
And keep them regardless, PCI compliant.
Yeah, because again, do all the heavy lifting for you.
Yeah. It's just, if you think about it, like as the council says, like every entity that accept payment cards, it's everywhere. So thank God for places like Shopify or all the other ones, because otherwise it would be a much different.
It certainly was back 10 years ago. It was a very different environment, wasn't it? It was a bit Wild West when it came to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on.
I was wondering when AI was going to come up. So is there any guidance or advice when using AI tools to help with PCI compliance? Can organizations still use them to do security event monitoring and meet compliance as well?
There's no guidance as such, but yes, you can absolutely use them.
You probably already are.
Probably,
in some
yes.
capacity. You may not be aware of it. All your event logs and there has to be some sort of logic there already. But yeah, I mean, the council took the time out to create a AI communication to the assessors to
They did, yeah.
cool our jets. Don't let an AI do everything. But yeah, I don't think there was anything specific to customers. And I've never heard anything.
As long as the tools you use are doing what the requirements ask you to do, you go ahead and use them. And to be honest with you, in some cases, you may end up using AI tools to cover a whole bunch of requirements in one hit with these kind of things. And then you might end up into customized validations because of it. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They're there, they do the job, they can make your life easier. So do use them. There's nothing against using them.
Yeah. And then the thing is like the little stuff, right? So like I have a client who's doing their like annual documentation review on their policies through AI, and they just threw all the bunch of policies there, and they tell AI what sort of requirements it needs to evaluate the documentation against, either PCI or ISO, whatever. And it just itemizes like, okay, so for the logging policy, I didn't see the retention period. It wasn't mentioned in the policy. So it's like little stuff that you may just gloss over when you create actually a policy. AI picks it up and lets you know that, okay, so this is missing in order for this policy to be compliant for a particular standard, PCI, whatever it is. So yeah, go for it.
Yeah, we're all behind it. It makes life easier, and it can, root out evidence. It can do all sorts of things. So just keep your eye on it. Just validate it yourself when you get the results. Don't blindly rely on it, though. All right, next question.
When you assess us, will you be looking to see all our policies and procedures separated out, or can they be integrated into our wider ISMS? I think that's a great question.
Either or, to be fair.
I don't care as long as you have it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. As long as they're there and they're valid and you're using them, I don't mind. You can chuck them in one. You can separate them out. Yeah. Just tell me where the bits are I'm asking to see, and I'll look at them and check they're right. That's all it comes down to.
I agree 100%. Yes, you don't need to have like a separate PCI policies, especially for a large organization. Just whatever you have documented, let us have it, and we feed it through AI. Find out whether it's everything.
No, we don't do that yet. I mean, we're looking into it, but we don't want to share your data with these services because we don't know what we're doing with it. So, we won't do that yet. Okay, moving on.
Another good question here. So we're developing a new payment system for our web application, and I've been looking into tokenization services to allow our customers to save their card details with us. Do we have to use third-party tokenization, or can we do it ourselves?
You could, if you have the manpower, the people who can do it. No, you don't. You're not relying on any third party.
Nope.
You just have to follow the key management guidelines and whatever requirement 3 says.
It's just you got the added workload of ensuring that wherever that token can be reversed is considered CDE, and therefore it requires all the controls around protecting stored card data. So if you're storing it yourself and tokenizing it, then you want to make sure you've got all those extra controls in place on the stored environment. If you're using a third-party tokenization, you won't have that because you won't store it yourself. So it just depends on whether you've got the resources to manage storing card data. You're perfectly allowed to.
Yeah. There's nothing against it. Well, the way you store it and how you store it, and
obviously.
But I don't. Are tokenization services expensive?
I don't know. I've got a couple of clients who do it themselves, and I've got a couple of clients who outsource. I imagine the ones who do it themselves tend to be bigger companies who've got the internal capabilities and technical knowledge to be able to do it. I don't know what the cost of third-party tokenization services is. They can't be that expensive because there's quite a lot of them.
I don't think so. Like it's probably, I would assume per transactions, but it must be a minuscule amount. What would be interesting to, yeah, it's kind of like off topic, but so every time, do you need to pull the token? Are you gonna are you paying only once for tokenizing the data, but every time you pull it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is that an extra? Yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
I should look into it. Anything to be aware of is if you are storing it yourself is you can't store the CVV. You can only tokenize everything else but the CVV. So don't be doing that. You need to recollect that every time. Right.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay. Is it possible for an organization to both be a merchant and a service provider?
I had this recently from a client who I was gap analysis on them, and they're like, but we've always done the service provider one. I'm like, yeah, but in this instance where you're taking payments for yourself, you're a merchant. So you need to do both appliances. They do need to be separate certifications, although there'll be an awful lot of overlap. In my case, they're identical for the client I'm doing. It's the same infrastructure for both their own payments and the third-party payments. So.
Yeah, the only time I ever saw this is there was no separate like a merchant environment versus a service provider environment. It was all like rolled in together. Mm-hmm. So yeah, apart from making sure you cover all the service provider requirements, blah blah blah, but but yeah, I guess it's more expensive to get it done, I guess, because if for us QSAs you do two separate AOCs. The ROC is common, obviously, but like the effort put into it is a little bit more on the assessor. In terms of assessment, it's one assessment.
The lines can be blurred quite easily when you're a company taking your own payments and stuff. It happens a lot in the places I've come across. It is service industries in tourism or services and places like that. You'll find these companies will take payments on behalf of other companies and also for themselves, just to allow them to connect with as many possible clients. So you end up with a dual certification, and all your processes and procedures and policies are going to be across both. The environment's largely going to be the same for both, so it shouldn't be much extra work to do it.
So you might have a separate network diagram perhaps, or like a cardholder data flow diagram, but for example like build and file review and whatnot, it's going to be the same thing for both the environment or the environment as a whole.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tibor. We've received this question, which I think is quite an interesting one. To what extent do we need to be compliant for vending machines, handheld payment terminals and web applications that use a payment gateway? So I think there's quite a bit to unpick there.
So vending machines, you've got a couple of clients that use vending machines, haven't you, Tibor?
Yeah. Yes, we do. I have a couple of clients who use, well, it's not a vending machine per se, but there's one of these unattended, I think. What we need to establish is a vending machine is usually unattended, either, wherever, airport, train station, whatever. To be honest with you, I never came across vending machines. I came across in museums when you just touch and donate. So it's like a terminal in the middle of a hall. Nobody's monitoring it. It's just you touch it. But yeah, obviously, if we're going back to the basics of PCI, if those transactions are processed under your merchant ID, then it's your responsibility to report compliance on it. Now, the reporting compliance on it's a fairly simple thing, provided hopefully those card readers are P2PE. They're encrypted even before it's actually transmitted. There's no way of decrypting previous question, you descope your entire network, how that vending machine is connected.
Yeah, absolutely. So you do need to be compliant. They also mentioned handheld payment terminals, web applications that use a payment gateway. You do, even if you use a payment gateway, you still need to be compliant for your part that connects to that gateway, because that connection can be attacked, it can be hijacked, and man-in-the-middle stuff. So yes, you do need to be compliant, but by using payment gateways, your compliance is reduced, like we talked about in the previous question.
Yes, and I think this is where a lot of, we see this more and more often, which is sort of shocking that PCI is out nearly 20 years now, but the what's a merchant, who is responsible for it, is still a question sometimes. And you get into a merchant is like, I don't see anything. And I'm like, are you the merchant for this transaction? What does that mean? Do you have the merchant ID? And it's really as simple as that.
We still get that, but I don't touch card data, so I don't need to be compliant. We still get that question, even 20 years later, we still get it. And the answer is still the same. You do need to be compliant. You do, absolutely. Just to a lesser extent.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's where you can do scope reduction. It's where you can do outsourcing, all that kind of stuff. It helps. It's all related questions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So another question we've had is all around the requirement to check devices, and this is related to vending machines. So is a visual check okay, and does it need to be logged? And does the vending machine have to be checked to make sure it hasn't been tampered with?
This has come from a related person, obviously.
Probably the same person. The short answer is yes, you do. You're required. With version 4.1, I guess, or 4.01, I should be correct. The control is back to you. It's like you decide how frequently you check it.
Yeah.
And that frequency needs to be documented in your targeted risk analysis, which is one of the new a requirement came into power at the end of March.
Yeah. So you have to check it. You have to decide how often you should check it, and you have to decide that based on a valid risk assessment of how often it should be checked, and that will be dependent upon the machine, the terminal, the setup, the location, and a whole bunch of other factors that you'll have to take into account. And if it's a visual check, you need to check it hasn't been tampered with, you check it's still the right one, which may mean opening up the machine to check the serial number. And if it does, that's what you've got to do, because you've got to make sure it's still the right one and it hasn't been tampered with in any way.
Yeah. But again, to answer the question, yes, you do need to log it, because during your assessment, your assessor, or whenever you create the self-assessment questionnaire for yourself, even if not with the help of the QSA, there is a requirement that says there needs to be evidence to it. And just back to the frequency very quickly. So we have a client who sells transport tickets, and they're in train stations and unattended. They're there overnight. And then those terminals are checked daily, because, anything could happen overnight. There might not be security cameras pointing to it, so it's needed. On the other hand, in a museum, for example, when there's just nobody around, when there's nobody in the museum, then they said, okay, we don't need to do this daily. Let's do it weekly or even monthly. But again, the point is, it's the merchant's responsibility to decide how frequently this is done.
Yeah, absolutely. Best advice.
Okay, question, it seems, from a merchant. So like most merchants, we lease payment devices from a third party. Is it our responsibility to check the hardware for end-of-life dates and the accredited version of the software running, or does this lie with the suppliers themselves? That is a great question.
This is an interesting one.
Yes.
Everybody leases, I think. I don't know anybody who owns the payment
devices.
Yes,
I don't either.
So the answer is it's complicated. There is a responsibility for you to check end of life and accredited versions, but they can't be updated unless the supplier has an updated version.
Yes.
So it's kind of split, I would imagine. I know a lot of my clients, when the software gets updated, it auto updates itself. The supplier pushes out those updates, those types of devices for you.
Well, I guess if you look at the question, it says, is it our responsibility to check hardware for end-of-life dates? It is. Because, for example, let's just, and again, it's a hypothetical situation. Let's say you're running P2P terminals, right? And you're a merchant, and you rely on a P2PE, the point-to-point encrypted self-assessment questionnaire, but the only way you're eligible to that is if your solution that you're running is actually validated and not end of life. So it's your responsibility to see it. And if I'm not mistaken, 12.8 has again a responsibility that your service providers are PCI compliant, and I would believe that would include a hardware provider as well.
There is a requirement to annually check your hardware and software for end of life as well. So yes, physically wise, you're going to have to. Software on those terminals, it may be quite hard for you to check which version it's running on and all the rest of it. So that's why I talked about the fact that they would generally be auto updated by suppliers software wise. You won't notice it, but hardware, definitely you should be making sure you've still got the accredited version and the correct version. And if it's gone end of life, contact the supplier and say, look, we need the next ones because they're going end of life.
Yep.
They'll probably want them back anyway because they're theirs. So they're probably going to want them returned at some point.
And again, one of the real life stories, I'm struggling with one of my clients where their P2P card readers gone out of compliance, and the provider decided not to revalidate that particular product. And so they're like in the middle of, what am I doing? So we had to have issued a non-compliant assessment for them. And again, I think there was a question we talked about this recently, that what happens if my report is non-compliant? What am I doing? And again, so this particular client had to go back to their acquirer and say, nothing's changed. It was a P2P validated product up until 2.5 months ago. So the risk is minimal for any sort of exploit would be available for this. And basically the acquirer said, sure, no problem, make all reasonable efforts to replace this as soon as you can, but they accepted a non-compliant assessment.
Yeah. Well, that's the age-old answer of, if can I do this for compliance, is you go back to your acquirer and check they're okay with it. If they're okay with it, then it's good, because they're the ultimate reporting authority. So.
And I guess, just speaking of this, that's another misconception, I think, with PCI is you or merchants or service providers report their compliance to the PCI Council or Visa or MasterCard, which is not true. You report your compliance to your acquirer. They are responsible for you, for the card brands, basically. And if you're unsure how to report your compliance, like what sort of self-assessment questions should you use, always go to the acquirer. Just ask them, because they are eventually the arbiter of this.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Amazing, Tibor. Thank you very much for that. Okay, another question we've had is, what are the minimum standards for reconciling our physical terminal estate? i.e., must we, and if so, how and how often do we have to verify what terminals we have and where they are located?
I'm detecting a theme here in these questions.
Yes, I think it's coming from the same person.
That's fine. No, we'll absolutely deal with it. They're all pretty good questions, to be honest with you, and they're all questions that a lot of our clients do have.
It's one of those things that, it might not be the answer to somebody who's not a QSA or have been around payment might not be so obvious. Yeah.
So do you have to reconcile it? Yes. And what are the minimum standards for reconciling it? So you need to know what terminals you've got, what models they are, what makes, the serial numbers, and where they're located. And you should verify that as often as your risk assessment says you should verify it again.
Yes. Yeah.
So that depends on how much they're used. I have clients who have a handful of them that only go out to, they're signed out to people to use on a case-by-case daily basis. So they're stored in a locked cabinet in an office. They reconcile it every time one goes out. They reconcile it when it comes back and make sure it's the same one. The reconciliation is done sporadically every time it's used. Whereas other clients who have large retail estates will get their store managers to reconcile them once a week or once a month or whatever it is they determine. So they need to be reconciled, and it's up to you.
Yeah. Again, you need to have an up-to-date list of them at all times. But again, this is not something. Again, the standard kind of gives you the control on this one, saying periodically. So it's your decision.
Yeah, absolutely. That was an easy one. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So another question we've had in. I like this one. So, what checks are actually required on physical terminals? What about non-standard terminals like secure tap devices, souvenir dispensers, donation terminals? But what about QR codes that lead to a payment page? So there's a few different questions in that one, I'd say.
This is interesting. Yeah,
it is, isn't it? Yes. So physical terminals, I think we've covered that. You need to check them for tampering, for substitution. We've covered that in the previous questions. So that's the same stuff. That's what's required. Non-standard terminals, tap devices, they're still considered PIN entry devices or card reader devices under PCI DSS, so they're still going to have the same physical checks for not standard. I think I've walked past, like the buskers on the tube in London, and they have the ones that are just standing on a stand, and you walk past and swipe your card to just tap a certain amount. Those non-standard ones, same stuff is required for them.
Yeah, exactly. I think in the ISIS they treat it sort of like an unattended POI device, and all the what is it now, 9.5, I think the
9.5, yeah,
9.5. So all the 9 controls are applicable, like it was any other point of interaction device. QR code are interesting though.
Yes.
I don't honestly. I think okay, so what could go wrong, right? If somebody put a sticker over it with another QR code, and then you trust it is yours, but the payment goes somewhere else.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. It's a question I don't think I've ever had come up with regards to having a QR code for a payment page. I guess it's technically a URL link to a payment page, right? That's what the QR code does when you hover over it. You're clicking a link. So in my mind, I think I would treat that the same as a link to a payment page that would be on a website, as in you need to make sure it's not been tampered with in some way, which on a website you do with virtual controls and integrity checks and that kind of stuff. So I would guess if you're putting these QR codes up in your physical environment that lead to your payment page, you would need to make sure they haven't been tampered with on a regular basis in some way, which is probably going to mean validating them.
It's right. So it's not like when you validate a physical device for tampering, but you still need to validate this, because this could impact the security of the cardholder data, i.e. it's in scope. So I agree. I think again, I've never seen this before, but I would imagine there are like tamper-proof stickers, or you put them behind glass maybe, or like so people cannot mess with it. I don't know, but
because the only way you're going to mess with it is if you put another sticker over the top. I can't see you editing it by hand with a biro or something. That's never going to work for a QR code.
If somebody can do it, it could be in the Guinness World Book.
So I think like behind glass or somewhere where it's obvious it's had an over sticker on it that you can check would mean
or as an additional thing, but again, this could be so what the website it opens, right? So it's clearly branded, but again, it's very easy to spin up a website that is almost identically branded, but
I guess it comes down to physical checks of the QR code, the poster or the sticker that it's on, physically being checked regularly to make sure it hasn't been adjusted. It's an interesting one though. I've never had it come up. I haven't had that. That's a new one on us. QR codes for payment pages.
And so easily. Like if I wouldn't know anything about PCI, I was like, it's just a QR code. What do you mean? It's not in PCI. What? Why? But completely.
When you dig into what it's actually doing and the risks there are to it, it is possible to tamper with it. It is possible to adjust it. And the unsuspecting member of the public would never know any different. If it had a sticker put over the top of the QR code with a different one, you'd never notice. So,
And just to round it up, if the QR code comes online, again, it's not a physical stuff, but then it's still in scope. So whatever presenting that QR code is in scope.
Absolutely.
Any web server or whatever, even though potentially the web server never sees cardholder data, it's sort of like a redirect, but it is still in scope.
At that point, it just becomes like any other payment page, web page setup at that point. Okay, good question.
That was interesting, actually. It was nice. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks both. I'm very conscious of the time. As I've mentioned earlier on, all outstanding questions, anything we haven't had time to address now, we will reach out and we'll answer them directly over the next couple of days. And any that have been submitted or if there's any other questions you have, pop them on your feedback form. Yeah, and we'll definitely be in touch. Just a massive thank you, Alistair, Tibor, for taking time out of your busy diaries today to take part in this Q&A session. I hope everyone found it as useful as I have. So we're pleased to offer, off the back of this webinar, a sort of half-day PCI DSS workshop where really you can use the time fairly flexible, but it's really important for scopes to be correct and potential reduction of your scope. So that's probably the focus for us on those workshops. Normally this is priced at $650, but as a special offer for all of our attendees, we've got a discounted rate of $550 for that. So if that's of interest, please pop that on your feedback form. Again, we'll get in touch to organise that. Hopefully you enjoyed today's session, and our future events may be of interest. So 1st of October, we have a session running on ISO 27001 and making use of the controls in Annex A. 22nd of October, we're looking beyond ISO 27 and talking about DORA and NIST 2. So if that could affect your business, or you want to learn more about that, feel free to register. And then looking into November now, we've got a webinar with BSI, which is going to be on how to achieve certification to ISO 27001. So hopefully we'll see you at some future events. Please complete your feedback form. It's really important, your feedback, and it sort of molds the future of our events. So any feedback you have, please leave that with us. And finally, just like to finish off by thanking everyone that's attended today's webinars, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Thank you.